take some clean water here, and I kind of firecracker effect. Water repels the paper, pushes it away. And this is actually a really fun technique that you're going to learn later. So if you notice that there's a distinct line there because you've added a little bit too much water to your brush, what you can do is wash off your brush, dry it off on your paper towel, just tapping it around. Come back, bring it down again, like that. Wash off your brush a little bit, dry it. So you have less water on your brush, you don't get that watermark. Continue to bring it down. And that is a simple color gradient. Okay? So this is really great. Now what we're going to do, that's when you use two colors. So you might see a night sky that is blue at the top and that slowly moves into a sunset. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So again, let's pick a different blue. Let's pick Prussian blue for a change. And I'm going to start by doing the same thing at the top of the paper. See how dark that is? Very dark value because I picked up a lot of pigment. Start at the top, slow, bring it down, no rush. And so wash off the brush a bit, dry it to the side, maybe just tap on my paper with towel just a little bit. Start where I left off, so tap your brush on the paper towel, if you don't have that much water, it's not going to repel the paint. Start where you left off. Now, it's pretty dark, and I'm going to wash my brush off. And I'll take the towel just kind of to the edge of it, like so, and bring it down halfway, and stop. Then you're going to pick your second color. Okay, if you're doing sunset or something like that, maybe it moves into pink. So I'm going to pick my second color. Again, nice and saturated. And I'm going to start at the bottom, and I'm going to start moving upwards. Again, I don't want a lot of this dark color. I want it to start to move a little bit here. And if it feels better if you pull down than move upwards, you can always put it on your paper. Okay? Slowly touch the bottom. Start to move it towards, and you can see how light it is. So I know when it kind of mixes here, it's going to be a nice light wash. And you can there. Again, make sure you don't put a lot of water in the brush. I'm going to start pushing that color. You can see here. You can see it's just like this slight line here. Just a little bit too much water. So that. Just washing my brush off so there's no pigment. Dabbing my brush on my paper towel. And I'm just kind of moving it around, blending it out a bit. Like so. I'm going to bring that pink up a bit more. Wash off my brush. Right. So that's a dual color gradient. Alright, it's also blending. We're blending in the middle. We're blending two colors together. We're not just meeting, we're blending to create a new color. So that's a really great exercise to practice as a beginner. It may not look this smooth and seamless for your first try. Definitely try to dry off your brush if you are getting those watermarks. Just remember, it happens to all of us. The only reason why I know this is because I've done it a million times. I have made that mistake a million times before I got it right. Okay. Also, like I said, your paper is going to make a huge difference whether the water and pigment move the way you want it to. So, one pad of paper I do recommend starting out with, which is a really great option. I can only seem to find the giant version of this paper, but it's Academy watercolor paper, also known as I don't know how to say it, watercolor paper. You can find it on Amazon, and it's pretty, here's the Chinese name right there. You can find it on Amazon, and it's fairly inexpensive for cotton paper. It's a really good option. So if you do want to just hop into some cotton paper, because you're getting frustrated with maybe your cheaper paper, which is fine to use. I started out with that too. Depends on your budget. This is a really great option. You can always cut it up into little pieces so you can use more of it. Okay, so that's our gradient. Now we're going to focus on blending of it. And it's the same kind of deal. So blending is when you're mixing two colors together. See? But also maybe if you're going back and add shadows to things after things have dried, and you want to blend out lines to make them nice and faded out, seamless, okay? So let's say we kind of did the mixing of two colors, but we can do it again. Just let's blend two colors together on the paper. So maybe we want to go with the gradient of our yellow, and it doesn't have to go light. Yellow to blue. Okay, we move inward. Again, try not to have too much water on your brush, and then you can kind of just blend them in the middle, like so. Okay, so that's one kind of blend. Now, usually when I blend in my work, let's say I'm doing like a leaf, okay? So I'm gonna make a leaf here. Yellow, and some blue, mixing my color, okay? And I'm creating a leaf here. And I want to darken some of the areas to create a shadow. So this is going wet on wet, so which you will learn in a bit, where I'm adding wet paint to a wet surface, but I want to make this darker, okay? So maybe I'm adding in a darker green, and I want to blend it in nicely because I don't want it to just be this dark green and then light green. I want it to blend. I want it to go from one color to the next, like this gradient. So again, we just learned that adding more water will repel the color. So what I want to do is wash off my brush, dry it, and then very gently, I'm just going to touch where they meet, and I'm just going to kind of blend, maybe dragging it down a little bit. If you find you're dragging too much of that dark color downwards, again, wash off your brush, dry it well, because a little drop is going to make that kind of watermark and blend. Okay, the other tip is blending, you don't apply a lot of pressure. If you apply a lot of pressure, you're actually going to be lifting some of the pigment, which is a technique, but if you're trying to blend, you don't want to do that. So lifting would be if you wash off your brush, dry, and then you blend, but you're kind of applying a lot of pressure. See how I'm lifting some of that color up? So now it's dark, light, medium. You don't want that. You want the tiniest amount of pressure, just going back and forth to your brush to blend it out. Okay, and then you get this really nice gradient of a dark to light shadow. All right. Now, if you do want that kind of like stark line for a shadow, you can do that and you don't have to blend it out. I'm going to show you how to blend as well on wet on dry. So we did wet on wet, which again, I'm going to go over what wet on dry is more in depth in part 2 of this video. It's coming out whenever my next video comes out. This is a weird looking link, but that's okay. But the wet on dry is when you paint another area onto a dry surface. So right now this is wet, but I need it to dry. So I'm going to wait a minute, come back, and let it completely dry. Okay, so now my leaf is dry. I'm going to show you how to go back and add shadow on an already dry surface and then blend it out so you get the same kind of effect, even though this dried kind of funky because we did lift, but it should have been a smoother gradient. Now, either will work, but I feel like this method might be a little bit easier for beginners because wet on wet can be tricky with water. So we have a dry surface. Now I'm going to go back in. Dry line there. Quickly, you're going to wash off your brush, dry it on your paper towel, and you're just going to touch the edge and blend it the same way we did our gradient. And you're just moving along. Okay, mine's a little streaky right now. It's okay. Very gentle, just slowly moving it. And I'm going to be going to the edge of the leaf. And I washed it dry with my brush because I noticed that a little bit more of that dark pigment was moving its way into the lighter area, and I didn't want that, so I washed it off, dried it, and just touched the edge. So I'm going to go back in, Add a little bit more darkness. Again, wash off my brush, dry it on my paper towel, and slowly and gently moving it along. If I have too much pigment there, wash and dry my brush off. So I'm really maintaining the lightness of the highlight over here, really gently. Okay, and you should get a decent gradient from dark to light that way as well. Try both methods, see what works. Also with the wet on wet type, another way you can do it. So we have our light value here, our light color. Sometimes you do like a little bit more of a stark, kind of not definitely like a straight shadow line. Like that. So what on wet, which we'll learn in our next video, makes a really nice blurry kind of effect. It naturally kind of wants to blend. Watercolor pigment wants to move wherever there is water. Okay, so if there is water, if all of this is wet, it's going to slowly start to move that way. Once an area starts to dry, that pigment is going to stop moving, and you're going to see these kind of funky lines, which we call blooms or watermarks. So naturally, you're going to get kind of this gradient. So if you like this, where it's still kind of like a stark line where you see the dark and the light, if you like that style though, go for it. If you want it to be a bit more blended with the wet on wet technique, really dry off your brush, gently blend. Like so. Okay? So you can do it either way. And like I said, I love to use this in my flowers and everything, especially like if I'm doing a flower, I'd say there's a petal here. I have to make it lighter, but I didn't think about that. Okay, and you can do your dual color gradient. I'm doing with the flowers. Say I want to add darker shadow or even a darker color towards the center of this. Okay, so I'm going to take some of my pink, add a little bit of blue to it. With the wet on wet, I'm tapping towards the center, adding that color. Now, if you like the way it looks with the wet on wet, where it kind of just bleeds out like that, leave it. You can totally leave it. But if you want more of a blended look, wash off your brush, dry it, and just gently touch it. So it's a bit more of a seamless blend. But again, it's all about style, what you personally like. And then if you wanted to do it after it's dry, I will show you. I'm going to dry this first, and I'll come right back. Okay, now that it's dry, I will show you how to add, again, the shadow with it on dry. I just made my pink really dirty here. It's okay. Okay, I added my shadow. Maybe I want it to be a dark gradient kind of coming up the petal here. Place my shadow, wash, dry off my brush, and just kind of touch the edge of it and just slowly move it along. Okay? Again, the pigment wants to move where there's water. So if I stop dragging it there, you're going to see water. So you want to drag it to the end. Wash my brush and touch the edge of that. Blending it to the end. Okay? Those are different ways that you can blend and use color gradients in watercolor. It's so much fun, but again, it takes a lot of practice. Just keep practicing and have fun with it. Release all the pressure of creating a masterpiece, especially when you're beginning. It's not supposed to look perfect. I didn't find it. I lost it. So just have fun, practice, and let me know in the comments if there is anything that you're struggling with, specifically with this technique. And then make sure to check back our next video. We'll be doing 2 more techniques that you absolutely need to know when starting with watercolor. Thank you all so much for watching my video. I really hope you liked it, and I hope you learned something, and I will see you in our next video for our 3rd and 4th technique that you just have to know for painting with watercolor. I'll see you next time. It's covered in smooth dark chocolate. Try your friends, welcome back to another video. My name is Emily Babe, and today we are on day 2 of our techniques that you absolutely have to know when beginning to paint with watercolor. Today is going to be some fun ones. We're doing my favorite technique, which is the wet on wet technique, as well as the wet on dry technique. So get out your paints and let's start. But before you do, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell so you're notified every time I come out with a video. Now, let's jump in. Okay, friends, so today we are on day 2 of our techniques you need to know to begin with watercolor. Last time we did color gradients and we did blending, which are 2 different techniques. And today we're going to do something a little bit more fun, which I already kind of touched on in the first video. But we're going to start with wet on wet. Wet on wet technique is what drew me to watercolor. I absolutely love this. It is what makes watercolor that shining star of a medium in art, which I love. So we're going to be having some fun with that. And then we're going to do some wet on dry, which isn't not as fun. It's just different. So I explained a little bit in the last video. Wet on wet is when you are painting with wet paint on a wet surface. So a lot of times we'll do this to create a really nice blurry effect or have an easier time with blending or gradients. But it's just a lot of fun and you can create some really beautiful effects. I'm going to show you so you can always start by my watercolor. So just like pretend this by just dragging your brushes, clean water across your page. And this is just fun if you want to kind of create some really fun patterns and just kind of have a mindful, meditative time. So this little area here is wet. Then I'm going to take some wet paint, whatever color you like, and all you're going to do is drop it into that wet area, and you get these beautiful explosions of color. Honestly, so much fun. Great fireworks, patterns, like even stripes like this. Hold on, this is nice pigmented one. Like look at how that moves. It is so fun to do. And like I said in our last video, pigment only wants to move where there is water. So you'll start to see the outlines of the shape that I made with just water. So another way you could do it, which is a lot of fun, paint, leaf, or flowers with just water. Okay, take your color. Let's get more color here. There we go. And then you just drop it into that wet area and watch that color dance. And it only moves where there is water. And it just creates the most beautiful patterns and line. Like it's faded. It's what drew me to watercolor. You can add in different colors, yellows, purples, whatever you want. And just watch it do its thing, just tapping it in. Okay? You don't have to fill the whole area, nothing. And you can just move it around like this and watch it kind of dance and blend together. So much fun. So while it's a lot of fun and it can create some really cool effects with like botanicals, anything, I love using it in landscapes to create an illusion that things are far away. So let me just wipe this up again. Let's pretend this is a blue sky. Okay? So I'm just blending it out. I love to create trees that look like they're far away in the distance using the wet on wet technique. Okay, I'm just going to blue sky color, but let's just pretend it is. Okay, and what I like to do is put the paint on my brush. With the tip of my brush, I am going to draw a really light line, just using really light pressure, coming down like this. And then little kind of branches coming out, just tapping. And create this really blurry tree. If you watch some tutorials, you will see a lot of backgrounds. Okay, we're just tapping. What you want to make sure you don't have a lot of is a lot of water on your brush. So if I take a lot of water on my brush and I go in, actually that's not a lot of water, it's gonna explode more. Okay, the more water you have on your brush, the less control you have of where that pigment is going. So if I have a ton of water and I'm trying to do this really fine line, it's gonna be really big. Okay, so what you want is to have a bit of pigment and a little bit of water. I'm just going to blend that out again. Our paint back here. Oh, this is a little kind of blurry. That's good. Okay, so I wash off my brush, I dry it a bit, so there's no excess water, and I pick up the wet pigment that's right there, and then I get these really nice controlled lines. Okay, so you can just kind of practice doing that. So I'm just going to, I don't want to waste paper, so I'm just going to blend this out again, and you can practice that. Lot of blue right there. Okay, so I'm blending it. I got a nice white surface. Look, I have kind of like the color gradient here. In practice, water control and applying some amount of pigment when I'm done. So try it. Nice color is really if your paint already dry, you're going to need to add water to that in order to pick it up. So if I just go right into dry paint, you're not going to be able to get that effect. You have to have pigment paint-ish. Okay, so let's just hit the blue because it's the easiest to see. Okay, so here's our blue, nice and wet, dark. Okay, I'm going to wash off my brush. I'm just going to dry it on my paper towel so I don't have a lot of water on there. Then I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to try to make these thin little lines. Okay, now if I want it to be a bit bigger, I can just wet my brush a little bit more. And see how it's a little bit bigger. So you control the size of like the explosion by how much water you need to go in your brush. If I want pretty decent explosion, I add a lot of water to the brush. Something to practice. Okay, but it's so much fun and it's so relaxing. When I first started watercolor, I used to fill a whole page with water and then drop in color and wait for it to dry and write positive quotes over the top. It was one of my favorite things to do. It was very therapeutic and it felt like a nice like, meditation kind of thing to do. So have fun and experiment. Again, try different amounts of water. So my brush isn't soaking wet, so there's not a lot of drips. But a little bit of water in there, the paint is wet, and I can get a decent little explosion. Alright? It's also fun if you're doing, say, like a snowstorm. So hold on for a second. I'm just going to keep using the same one over and over again. Now remember how I said that water repels pigment? A really fun effect you can get is by having your wet surface, washing your brush off completely, having clean water, pretend my water clean, and not having it completely dry, your brush, having a little bit of water in there, and then you're just going to flick your brush onto your paper. And see how it repels the pigment? But it creates these beautiful little sparks of just like little blooms, which is really beautiful for like a field that maybe has some like out of focus flowers or some light spots in the background, snow. You can do that with just water or even white. It's so nice. So the wet water onto the wet background creates some beautiful effects. Okay, so that's basically our wet on wet. I really like it mostly just for creating out of focus things. So like I said, there's trees. Okay, maybe you have a field of flowers. Here's my background. And I want some out of focus flowers. Okay, see how there's just like wet, there's like green back here. I'm gonna leave some space here. And then for the other flowers in the background,
It's 11 o'clock.
because I want them to be nice and small, my brush is fairly dry and it takes like wet paint further. I'm just gonna do these little dabs in water. Always test. Pink. Dry. Flowers. Feel the flowers. Try to make it smaller so they're not so bright. We can do this for one on that. It just makes them look like they're very colorful. And then we're going to talk about wet on dry. So let me let this dry and then I'll show you what it is. Okay, now that my paper is completely dry, I'm going to show you the wet on dry technique, which is just what it sounds. You are painting wet paint on a dry surface. So this is already dry. And what that effect does is it makes things look sharp and beautiful. So we have these little blobs of color that look like they're coming from these flowers. Now, and as we move up close, I just left a little bit of white space just so I can put some colors here. Do some like that. These little flowers. Never done. Okay. And then I wait for them to dry before you do centers. Okay, but then you have this step you're painting when you have that wet on dry and a focus background, and then this unfocused one. And then same with the trees. I should have left those fuzzy trees from the background because it's really nice when you have them in the background and then you create your wet on dry trees in the foreground. Okay, so see how sharp that line is? There's no water on the paper, so the pigment stays where you put it. Okay, so if you have those blurry trees in the background, in the foreground, just crease.
At Harlan, we've chased down a lot of trees, each one leading to the next, all the way to our latest. Introducing the all-new, all-electric watercolors.
So keep that in mind when you're doing any kind of painting. So if you're doing, say, a flower, this, you know my channel, you know that I love painting flowers. Yeah, same kind of flower. Just really quick. If you want to do a center to your flower that's nice and detailed, where you can see every line, you're going to want to do wet on dry. You're going to want this layer to dry, because if you don't, remember, wet pigment, if it touches another area that's wet, it wants to kind of bleed into it and move around. So if I try to create this like center with dots, you're not going to see it. It's just going to bleed because it wants to move into that wet area. You need to wait for it to dry before you do anything detailed over top. Now, if you want it to look like that, where it kind of like bleeds out, that totally works too. Again, just figure out what kind of style you want to go for by experimenting with the different styles to see what works best. Okay. If you want to have leaves that are nice and kind of separate the flower, you're going to color to the next, like that. And you get a little bit of that color bleeding into the next. Okay, so it doesn't look as detailed, as structured. You have this little bleed from one color to the next. All right, it depends on your style. If you want something more loose, you can do something like wet. So wet touching wet. And if you want it to be a little bit more structured and detailed, you would do layers and doing some wet on dry. Okay, layers is kind of the key with wet on dry. And that's basically it. So I hope that was helpful. If you have any more questions about these two techniques, send me below. And I will see you in the next video for more things you just need to know. Starting with watercolor technique edition. All right, I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and I learned something. And make sure to check back for our next video and our last two techniques that you just have to know when painting with watercolor. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time. Bye. Hey friends, welcome back to our last video in this series, techniques that you absolutely have to know when beginning to paint with watercolor. My name is Evelyn Babe, and today we're going to be doing some really fun effects that you can use when painting with watercolor. It is so much fun, so let's just dive in. But before we do, please hit that subscribe button. Make sure you turn on that notification bell so you're notified of every new video I come out with. And give this video a like if you like it, because that's just a really nice thing to do. Okay, let's jump in to our last video on watercolor techniques. Okay, friends, we are on our last video of techniques you need to know in order to start with watercolor, and today is more fun techniques that I really enjoy. They're kind of more effects that you can do with watercolor. So, to start, let's just go over what we went through last time. Our first video, we learned about single color gradients and dual color gradients and blending, which are both very important techniques. And then our last video, we did went on wet, which was a lot of fun. We went on dry to create depth and distance in those videos. Like I said, today we're going to do some fun techniques. Okay, so the first one that you may remember from like art class in elementary school, if you did this, is dropping salt. The really, really fun texture you can get from dropping salt into your paint. So I'm going to grab some ultramarine here, blue. I'm just going to lay it down. Remember how I said water has yellowish pigment? Is so salt that gives it a really cool effect. So I like to use this in like a fun sky, snow effect, just a lot of fun. So here I have a wet surface with some blue, a little cup of salt, just table salt.
Yan pala si
Table
Jeff.
salt and like coarse salt will give you different outcomes.
If you want to have lunch, Jeff, I also made one pack for you in salmon and ano.
Okay.
It's upstairs. And then
Thank you.
purple. Ay, conventional to order. Ang dalawa na naman. Correct.
Some people don't like that, but it's also really good dropping water, and this is more the dropping water on a damp surface, so not completely dry, just a little damp. So play around with that to see what kind of techniques you can get or effects you can get. And then our next fun effect is dry brush, which I actually really enjoy as well. Now, dry brush is when your brush is more on the dry side, not completely dry, but it's just damp. There's not a lot of pigment. And then you pick up drag it across, and you get this really fun texture. Now, one place I really like to use this is mountains. So I have to turn my brush off, pick up some glue, so there's not a lot of water on my brush, and I'll just create these mountains with dry brush. Let's maybe make it a little darker. So I will paint here. Wash off my brush, dry it so it's really dry. Clean up a little pigment. It's dark. And it almost looks like there's snow-covered mountains. See that? Darkness on one side. A little bit more definition. More textured paper. So if you ever listen to this paper, it might not come out as textured as this, but if you're there's a lot more texture you can feel it. There's more like paper. If you don't want to dry brush, you can add more water. You can smooth it out to get those solid lines. That's a lot of fun to use for texture in landscapes. Okay? And then our last fun technique, and is also really great for fixing mistakes, is called lifting or blotting. So we actually did this with our line back here, where I showed you if you blend too hard, you actually end up lifting, which is not what you want when you're trying to blend. But if you want to say, make something lighter, like say I'm making a bottle here and I forgot to add a highlight. And you always want to work light to dark with watercolor because you can't really lighten it after. But the one exception to that rule is wash off your brush while it's still wet, dry it on your paper towel, and lift the color with the brush. And you can reveal that highlight. Okay, so lifting helps when you want to create lighter areas on a wet surface. Or one other way that works is say you make a mark and go, oh, I did not want to do that. I just want to do that color. I ruined my new painting. Oh my gosh, what do I do? Take your paper towel. And you're going to lift it like that. Let's see if this actually goes with this paper. Okay. You lift up a bunch of that color, take some clean water, start to kind of gently scrub it. And you lift, and you can get most of it gone and say, I don't want that color, I want it blue. I made that mistake. Most times, you just keep going right over it, you don't even tell too much. That color was not the best example. Some colors are staining colors where they are harder to lift. Okay? So some colors will not come up as easily. I also, my paper towel is also very wet. So let's try to do it again with a different color. Okay, so let's try green. And I do a leaf, and I'm like, ooh, that does not look good. Make sure it's still wet. Work fast. Lift. Okay. Gently kind of scrub with clean water. Lift. Again, more clean water. Lift. And then you can most likely paint over top of it. Fill in. Whatever color you use. Fill in. Okay. So that's where you can lift to fix the mistake. This is where you can lift and make too dark of a value and you wanted that highlight. So I would do that, sometimes with my leaves and stuff. Dark drag the towel and then lift. Like that. And you make it lighter. And then the last part of the lifting kind of technique is lifting more with the towel, which is also called blotting. Now this is really great if you want to create some clouds. So let's just do a blue sky. So make sure it's wet. And then you're going to take your blue towel, just kind of like to wrap around my finger and create kind of like a circle. And then I will blot. Now, this is the color. Right up. Okay, still have a little bit of that blue in it. Keep in mind, lifting only works if the paper is still wet. Each dog is unique. Each dog is unique. Once it's dry, you can the extension of that is if you reactivate the corner. There is a fun kind of effect called polka, which I've done before, where if you've seen the photography, where you get those lights that are out of focus, so you get these kind of out of focus circles along, and I've done a painting or two, you trying to recreate that effect. And to do that, you paint the surface, let it dry, and then you take a wet, clean brush, and let's try and do it here. Circle with your brush and clean water, and you would blot, and it would lift some color. And like I said, it works with some colors and some papers and not others. Some are good for staining, but a lot actually do lift pretty well. Sometimes I find some papers use more heavier. But I use this technique if I'm doing a polka, just clean water, gently scrubbing in a circular motion, try to lift that color off, and it usually works. Okay, so there are more fun techniques that you can do with watercolor, and you just need to know because you can just create some cool effects in your paintings. And then lastly, this is dry now, it's just scoop off the salt, and you get this really cool effect. So much fun. So there you go. There is our lesson here.
Be, matawag ako sa'yo. Halika na. Wala doon eh.
Okay, so like I said in the intro, we are going to be working on some drills that you can practice to help better your leaves and florals. So this is for beginners, but as you progress, there's some little tips that would be great if you are not quite a beginner. Do this for a little bit, just to add a little bit of extra contrast to your leaves and florals. Okay, so I'm working on some watercolor paper. Just take the cheapest paper you have. To do these drills, you don't want to waste any of your good paper if you do have it. I have my Windsor using professional watercolor and I also have my craft roller, my size 10 round. Okay? So the first thing you want to do is just use green. So this is also a great way to use greens and just kind of have fun with it. My go-to greens are satin, which I like to mix on copper sometimes just to give it more of an olivey shade. So I'm just going to put a little bit of burnt umber with it. And then my other go-to green is Hooker's Green. Hooker's Green, sorry. Just pick up a lot of pigment. And it's purple. And then dark green. With our touch shade green, you can make blue green.
May niluto ko ba dyan? Ano naamoy ko sa
So once you practice those and you can do fun patterns on your paper, so it doesn't feel like you're wasting your paper, just knock yourself out and try those first. Okay, then once you felt like you've got enough practice with that, you're going to start working on thin to thick pressure. Okay, so you're just going to be combining thin to thick pressure to heavy pressure. So you do that thick line. And I also use a lot of this when I'm doing my leaves. So I want you to start off with light pressure, nice thin line, drag it out. Now press down slowly, thick pressure, come back up, light pressure. You're gonna have that thin line, down, thicker pressure, up. Okay, this is really good for your hand control. Usually why I get this across, okay, or you can just try simple short lines. So go thin, thick, thin. Light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure. Now you see that this little pool that's happening there? I addressed this issue in my water control tips and tricks videos. I'll link those below. And then because the issue with this is that when it dries, you're going to get a darker mark and this like kind of like funky like cauliflower look around that wet spot when it dries. Quick and easy fix. If you don't like this, all you have to do is just go back over the whole little area and just try and evenly spread out that water and it won't dry oddly. So you'll see the difference here. And if it still looks like there's a bit too much water, then if you dip it to the side, there's a little pool there, dry off your brush and just pick up that pigment. Okay, but for practice right now, you don't really have to worry about that. Just practice your thin, thick, thin. Okay? Thin, thick, thin. Then once you've got that down, you're going to try and drag it out a little bit further to make longer, thin to thick, thin lines like this. And this will help you with longer things. So you do light pressure, heavy pressure, push it down. For longer, light pressure. And that helps for like leaves like tulips or just like grass, whatever you want. Okay. Again, light pressure, heavy pressure, drag it out. Light pressure. And again, if you don't want that little mark, just move it back. Try to come back over. And this happens mostly on cheaper paper because the watercolor sits on top. Alright, with a bit more expensive paper, 100% cotton paper, the water seeps into the paper a bit easier, so you don't get these marks as often. Okay, so once you've kind of mastered the longer, thin line, I want you to start giving it a little bit of a curve. Okay, so now we're going to do it again. Thin, so light pressure, heavy pressure. Curve your brush while it's still thick. Bring it up, curve it again while you're giving it light pressure. And that just gives a little bit of movement to your leaves. Okay, let's try again. You can go any way you want. So light pressure, heavy pressure, curve, curve back up, thin pressure, light pressure. Okay? So try and give your line some movement. Let's try again. You can even just like fold it right over. Ready? Meet me to the bed. We're playing all this sweet way. You ready to sing? Dance. Learn. Against love. It's me to the bed. Light pressure. Heavy pressure. You need to go light pressure. So it looks like the leaf is folding. Back heavy pressure. Light pressure. Now look like the leaf is folded open. Okay, so just try that in many different directions. That's really going to help you when you want to give your leaves and lines some movement. Okay? So we've done light pressure, thin lines, heavy pressure, thick lines, curves, which are going to be great for your florals, S curves, same kind of thing, especially with these. And then your thin to thick lines, the light pressure, heavy pressure to light pressure is going to be great practice for your leaves. Okay, and then the last practice is the light pressure to heavy pressure to light pressure, but you're going to give your leaf two sides. So, I'm just going to grab some more pigment here. What you're going to do is you're going to go light pressure, heavy pressure, kind of curve like a C, light pressure. So see how it kind of has that curve? You're going to curve in that middle of your heavy pressure. Okay, and then you're going to go the other way to give the leaf another side. So you can start right at the same point, light pressure, heavy pressure, curve underneath. And then when you come up for light pressure, meet it at the tip there. And you're just giving your leaf two sides. Okay, and that's how to do thicker. Let's try again. Sorry about the glare on this. Okay, try and move my hand up there. So light pressure, heavy pressure, curve like a C, like a semicircle. Bring it up, light pressure, like that. Start at the same spot again. Light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure. You need it in the middle. And you can just move that pigment around to get it evenly wet. Alright, now you can try and start with a little stem. Okay, so let's do light pressure for the little stem of the leaf. You're going to go heavy pressure, then curve, up, light pressure. Light pressure, heavy pressure, curve, light pressure. Alright, and that's going to give you thicker leaves. Now you can do these long ones again to get a nice longer leaf. So let's start with a little stem with our light pressure, curve it a bit. Heavy pressure, drag it out for longer, curve it a bit. Light pressure. Again, start at the stem. Press down, heavy pressure. Try and curve it where you went. Light pressure. Alright? Now, I don't want you to think that your leaves have to be perfect. They don't. Not at all. There are times where I'm doing my loose florals, and I'm literally just going really fast, and I go like this, and I barely even finish the stroke, and it ends up in a start. You can see it. Look at the edges, all kind of jagged. I like the look of that. Light pressure, heavy pressure, and then just kind of lift up. Looks like a broken leaf almost. Okay, so that's okay too. Not all leaves are perfect. So if your leaf looks like it's like kind of missing a piece or whatever, I love the look of that. So just even try and go a little bit faster. See what kind of shape you come up with. So light pressure, heavy pressure, lift up. Really fast. Okay, so instead of dragging that light pressure, you're just lifting up. So light pressure, heavy pressure, up. Okay, and see that kind of broken off tip? Just makes it look a bit more organic almost. And perfect, which I personally like. Okay, so those are our strokes and drills for leaves. You may think these are just for leaves. You can use this for florals too. Okay, now I'm going to show you how I use those strokes with florals. So I'm going to use that thin pressure to do the center of a rose. So I'm just grabbing my pink here and I'm using the tip of my brush, really light pressure. And how I was telling you how to do kind of like little squiggles and circles. This is going to help you do that. So start off with your little squiggles. Don't even worry about what it looks like necessarily. And then you're going to do all those C curves with your heavier pressure, right? So press down, heavy pressure. Just a bit more pigment. 1, 2, just doing those C curves. The curves that are going around. 3. Okay, and then you should close off another petal over where 2 meet in the center. So I'll strategically put one here, make it a bit thicker. One here. Again, this paper is not great because the pigment sits right on top. You don't want these little marks, you just go right back over them and evenly wet those areas. Okay, and then I'll just messily kind of just keep using those C curves to build this rose. One thing I see with beginners with the issue with roses is that they leave too much white space. So just see here how in between each petal there's a little bit of white space. Sometimes it touches the next petal, sometimes it doesn't. You don't want big arches where you're going to have a lot of white space. Okay? So there's the strokes for a rose. I'll show you how to use them for a different flower. So like when I do an anemone, I'll use light pressure, a thin line, and press down a heavy pressure, almost kind of like a leaf. Again, light pressure, heavy pressure, and leave it up here, and there's a petal. And then I'll just keep going around in a circle. Light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure, heavy pressure. Okay. If you have to turn your paper, go for it. Do whatever feels most comfortable for you. And I'm not even trying to do it really like nice and neat, especially with my loose florals. Okay, and those are just my C curves, kind of like I was doing with the leaves. And then when you want to add a leaf in there, just grab the green, light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure. Okay, and there you go. And that's how you use it for florals. Okay, so the next thing I want to teach you is how to give a little bit of depth and contrast and use color bleeds in your leaves. So at the end of this video, we are going to do one full piece of just practice leaves all over a piece of paper. But one thing I really like to do is add darker leaves and lighter leaves kind of right beside each other, slightly touching to get really nice color bleeds. So you can do this on your practice paper to start. I'm going to grab some Hooker's Green. Okay, and then a little bit of dioxazine purple to make a nice dark green. We also can grab a bit of blue. And I'm going to show you one thing I really like to do in my pieces. So I'll grab a really light wash. I just washed all that pigment off of my paper and I just have a lot of water on my brush. So it's really, really light. One thing I like to do with my leaves, so let's do like a little stem with light pressure here. I'm going to do a really light leaf. Hopefully it will work on this paper because it's a little thin. I'm going to do a really light leaf. Then I'm going to grab more pigment and we're going to put a darker leaf right there, right next to it, so it will bleed into each other. Okay, you see that little color bleed from the stem as I touch the dark, wet area with the dark pigment with the light, and you get this really nice color bleed. Okay, I'm going to do it over here. And I touch this light leaf just a little bit to get a nice color bleed. And sometimes you'll get the light color bleeding into the dark into the light. Okay, so that's one way to do it. Or you can grab your light wash, which you can do a nice thin stem, do a light colored leaf here. Actually, let's do a couple and just make them all nice and light. And another thing I like to do is add that darkness right to the stem. The base of the leaf and the stem. Sometimes at the tip. And it just, that little hint of a color bleed really makes those leaves look interesting and stand out. Okay? So then you're just going to try and group your leaves together. Again, let's start off with a nice thin line. Really light pressure. Okay, and let's try some longer leaves. Okay, so remember we're just doing the same strokes, just elongating it out by using heavy pressure for a long period of time. So light pressure, heavy pressure, hold it down, curve it if you want, keep holding it, and then start to release pressure. Up. Okay, let's do another one. This one can be going a different way, light pressure, heavy pressure, holding down, light pressure. Light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure, light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure, light pressure, heavy pressure. You can totally just curve it all the way down, make it all bendy, give it some movement, okay? And these, because you waited so long to kind of like drag it out, it's not staying wet. Again, if you want to have those dark little color leaves, you're gonna have to re-wet that leaf, and then go back in with your darker color to get those color leaves. Okay? Or you can do your lighter or darker leaf right beside it to get those color leaves. Okay? So now we're just gonna mix up a bunch of greens. Your higher quality paper. That's okay too. Eventually you can work up to that. And we're just gonna fill a whole page of leaves. So for this part of the exercise, I'm using my Etcher Lab cold press watercolor sketchbook. I love this sketchbook. It's 100% cotton. Everything always tends to look better on 100% cotton paper. So this is a great option. Arches watercolor paper, Bee watercolor paper, anything that says 100% cotton cold press is a great option. And it's a little bit easier to work on. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so let's start mixing up different I got some sap green here. Just gonna prep my palette. And I wanna do leaves. We could do florals, but I wanna focus more on leaves today. Let's get our dark green here, our hooker green, the dioxazine purple. We could do, I'm just gonna mix some green over here and see whatever colors I have. Let's grab some blue, like that, and that's pretty good. Okay, so let's start having some fun and just creating floral piece. And let's just create a fun leaf piece. Okay, there's bandages in the cabinet. Grab two. And there you go. You can keep going, fill up every little white space. You can do some that are even smaller. Totally up to you, but just have fun with it. Work with longer leaves, shorter leaves, fatter leaves, bigger leaves, smaller leaves. Whatever you want. Try and get the contrast of those dark leaves bleeding into the light leaves. Change up the colors and just relax and have fun with it. Thank you all so much for watching my video. I really hope you liked it. If you learned something, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and follow me on Instagram for even more. Have a great day, guys. Bye. For the love of peaceful nights, at Zarbee's, we've got sleeping well down to a science. Really dabbing your brush. You can stagger it. It's like one of the easiest practice drills and strokes. Okay, you don't want it, you don't want like 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, you can, but it doesn't have to be natural. So have some in the middle, have some off to the side, and then if you'd like, you can grab your smaller brush and you can just kind of connect it all down the middle too. So it looks like there's a stem. You can grab a little bit of green or whatever. All right, and then go down a bit bigger just by giving a bit more pressure. Like that. Okay, so that's that stroke. And then another one I want to show you, which is super easy, kind of messy, looking, but might require a bit of effort, is these messy, short, kind of rounded petals. Change it up a bit. Okay, and really all you're doing is kind of like this scribble. Scribble back and forth. Like that. Little domino. This is great for if you're doing like a bouquet of like hydrangeas or something. You put them all close together. Just like the flowers, you're just doing like almost like a square. And you're just doing 5 in the center. You can always get like a darker pigment and have it bleed. Whatever you want, but it's like one of the simplest little strokes you can do. And really all you're doing is this. But just, okay. I kind of use delphiniums, like I said, hydrangeas. You just add a little bit of a dot in the middle, and that's it. Super, super easy. And then the last one, I'm just going to show you when you're doing this stroke, I want you to practice color bleeds. Because this is something I use in all of my loose florals, and it can be tricky to know how much water and paint to use. And also, it's a little bit tricky on cheaper paper. I'll show you here. So I'm going to grab some pink here, and you're going to do one of your petals. This is what I like to use for like buds. So again, you're just doing kind of like you're not dragging it out, so it has that blunt end. And we're just creating kind of like this circle petal for a bud. Okay, as you see, it's pulling out a bit. You want to add last one of the paper. So I'm going to dry off my brush. I'm going to pick up some of that pigment. There we go. Okay, so it's wet, but it's not sopping wet. Then I'm going to grab a little bit of green. I'm going to grab some sap green. And you don't want a lot of water on your brush. You want pigment, but not a lot of water. You're going to do a little stem. And all you're going to do is you're going to touch the bottom to get a little color bleed. Now I'm going to show you what's going to happen if your bud is pooling and there's just too much water, okay? This is the trouble you're going to run into as a beginner, which is why it's a great drill to practice. Okay, so here's my petal. As you can see, it's really watery. I'm going to grab some of my green. Okay, I don't have a lot of water on my brush. I'm going to see this. There's a lot of water right there. Look what happens when I try to. It pools with it. Okay, you want this nice color bleed, you don't want a pool. The other trouble you can run into, move to another bud. Okay, so maybe you kind of cleaned up that pool, it's not pooling, it's just nice and wet, but it's not a little pooling area. But when you go back in, you have too much water on your brush. Okay, and you try and do your little stem, and it takes over because you had too much water in your brush and it added a pool there. Okay, this is where water control comes in. I have a bunch of videos on this, but ultimately what you want, like we did in the first one, is a bud here. Pulling her up, tilt your paper to the side. See the little pool? You might see how that green is like all went to one area. Right here you can see dry off my brush. Pop it up with my dry brush. Okay, once there's no pool, it's not dry, it's still wet. Pressure of the light, tilt it towards the light. If you can see a little shine on it, you'll know it's still wet. That's what you want for your base. Grab your green. Sometimes it's easier to do if you have a smaller brush, because a smaller brush takes up less water. You can always pick up the pigment, dab it on your paper towel, just to get some of the extra water off. Then do your little stem and just touch it for a second, okay, and let it bleed. And then you do your little leaves around your butt. Okay, that's another really good drill practice. And that's about it. Those are all the main strokes that I use when I'm doing my loose florals. And it's just something you have to practice over and over and over again. So again, with your roses, your ranunculus, try not to leave so much white space. You really do not want these big arches of white space in there. With these, you know, just it depends on how you remove your brush. And again, cheaper paper, when you do lift it up, you're going to want to go over the petal again just to distribute that water evenly over the petal, especially with cheap paper. Because as you can see, if I'm doing this light pressure, heavy pressure, you get a pool right here and it looks a little dry here. That happens mostly with cheaper paper, and especially when you do the light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure. You're going to hold that water to the side, it's going to dry at different rates, and you're going to get kind of funky marks. So just go back over it. Okay, and just all the same amount of wetness. Again, if you have too much water on your paper, dry your brush off on your paper towel just a little bit. And again, just move it around, and you won't get those weird marks. And then for these ones, again, just work with the brush, try going different ways. This is not a great example of what you can do. Better tutorials of how to do like sunflowers and daisies and all that stuff. This is not a great example. But just working on that movement of your thinner petals. This one, the point is always kind of pointing down to get that point towards the center. This one is probably the easiest. This little, you know, kind of tilting your brush on the side. So now, like in our drills that we did for our leaves, I'm just going to show you how I would incorporate all of these strokes into a base.
It's 12 o'clock.
From playful puppy to adventurous adult, help keep them healthy. Minds for life.
Thank you all so much for watching my video. I really hope you liked it. I hope you learned something. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and follow me on Instagram for even more. Have a great day, guys. Bye. Dive with Heidi and Couples and Vitamin E. Lenses that is gentle on skin. Dive up your day. Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Emma Faith, and today we are doing part 3 of our watercolor drills videos. This one's a fun one. We are doing drills with wet on wet and color bleeds, so let's jump right in. so for today's part one of our drills video of wet on wet and color beads, we're going to be doing a really fun activity that I still do to this day when I just kind of want to let go, relax, and throw some color on paper. It's a lot of fun to do, like I said, it's relaxing, but it's also very important to learn and to practice when you are using watercolor. So I'm going to be painting in my Etcher Lab Press watercolor sketchbook. I have it clipped down because this is the last page of my sketchbook, so it was kind of folding a bit. And you just want to keep your paper as flat as possible, especially when doing wet on wet backgrounds or whatever. Just because if your paper is kind of tilted or ruffling on one side, it will start to cool in some areas, which can cause a little bit of trouble. So if you want to tape down your paper to your table or whatever, that might be a good idea. But I'm just going to clip down in my sketchbook. I'm using my Winsor & Newton professional watercolors, and I have my snap brush. So you just want a nice big brush, whatever you have handy, and we're going to begin. So for those who don't know, wet on wet is exactly what it sounds like. You are putting wet paint on a wet surface. So the first thing we have to do is wet up the surface. And for this exercise, we're going to be doing some circles. Okay, so what I want you to do is take some clean water on your brush, get your brush nice and wet, and you're going to, it's a little hard to see, just start painting a circle. Now, the tip that I have for you with wet on wet, and it's very important, what you're looking for when you are creating a wet background, you don't want it too wet to the point where it's going to pour or drip if you really tilt it to the side. But you want to make sure that there's a nice light shine to the paper if you were to tilt it. So I'm just going to see if I can show you by just using this paper. When you tilt it towards the light, you should see a nice sheen. So it's kind of like a shine over that area that you painted. This also helps you to see if there's any areas you missed. Now, what you don't want is it cooling in one area. So that's when you have a lot of water. I'm going to add a lot of water. Hopefully you guys can see this. Okay, that when you tilt it, it all cools in one area. That's not what you want. And this goes for like if you're doing the background and you're wetting up the whole paper. You don't want it cooling in one area because once you drop that color in, it's going to just sit there. Okay, and also the paper is going to dry it with grates. And so it's going to be really hard to work with. Let me make sure that you guys can see. Yeah, so that little pool right there you don't want. If you do have that, all you have to do is dry out your brush on your paper towel, mop it up, or you can take some paper towel right to the paper. Just keep drying your brush on your paper towel and move that around until you have a nice even sheen and there's no pool. Next, you are going to go into your color, whatever color you want to use. Hopefully I can keep this a little bit flatter. It's tilting down a bit, so it might move a bit. Whatever color you want to use, you don't want your paintbrush dripping because once you add more water, it's also going to create a pool. So just try and get more pigment on your brush using water, and all you're going to do is you're going to touch little sections of that wet surface area and watch it bleed, or just like kind of move. Okay, and this is wet on wet. Wet on wet is awesome for getting some really nice seamless gradients. So if you're doing like a sunset or a sky, you want to have it go blue to orange, whatever, it will create that really nice kind of fuzzy blend where if you don't see anything, any harsh lines. You don't get harsh lines with wet on wet. And this is also great for making things look out of focus. So I've done tutorials where I've done like trees in the background. Okay, and then once that dries, it will look like it's a blurry tree in the background. And we'll get into that in our next video. But just kind of dropping that color in there, doing wet on wet, can create so many different effects. It's awesome. So that's what I want you to do. I want you to just drop in color. Let's drop in some more color on top of that. I'm going to grab some Payne's Gray. And just watch it move. Okay? Now, like I said, if there's a pool, let's create a little pool here. Okay, there's way too much water. I'm going to show you what happens. I drop in the color there. Oops, and it just sits there. That's not what you want. You want it to dance and kind of move. All right, so I'm just going to grab my paper towel. If that happens, you can just mop it up, back, and then just move around that wet pigment. Okay? You don't want to pool. Okay, so now that we've talked about what wet on wet is, we're going to talk about color bleeds. And you can also do that with this exercise. So here I have my little circle. Now, a color bleed is when you touch two wet colors together and one color will bleed into the next. So, I don't know, turquoise. My color choices aren't great. And I'm going to do another circle right beside, slightly touching it, and watch the bleed that happens. Touching, you see that pigment being pulled into the turquoise. Once I do another color, you'll see it a bit more. I feel like I should have played out my color choices a bit better, but that's just a demonstration. Okay, you're just gently touching it. Okay, and as you color bleeds a little bit okay, you can even do a color bleed of color bleeding into just water. So I'm going to clean off my brush and just have a wet brush and watch this. I'm just going to touch this gently. And this also creates a really cool effect of just bleeding into the water. See that? Look at that. That's so cool. Now I'm going to grab some more pigment. Purple, some colors also tend to move a bit better. I find that with my dogs using purple and some of the cadmium yellows and oranges. Just watch. Okay, make sure that your circle is too wet. This looks a little bit too wet. It's kind of just cooling in one area, so let's mop that up a bit. Dry off my brush on my paper towel. I don't know if you guys can see that. I'm just drying it off like that. Making sure it's still wet. You'll get a much better color bleed or a wet on wet kind of like explosion when it's the right amount of wetness. Okay. And you're just going to create circles or even whatever shape you want all over your paper. Just dropping in color, seeing what you can create. Okay? Let's do another. Just mix colors, see what happens. Maybe 2 color bleeds. And you'll only get a color bleed happening when that first color is still wet. So it has to still be wet for you to touch it. Because once it dries, it won't bleed like that. I'll show you over here. That's a Russian green. You'll also want to dries. You're not going to get any really harsh lines. Okay, so I'll just show you up here. It's a bit dry. So if I were to touch just a bit, you're not going to get a color bleed because this one is already dry. Okay, and then that goes into layering, which is another drills video to come. Okay, so another thing I want you to practice with this is working on bleeding, contrasting, and complementary colors, or doing wet on wet. So if you don't know, contrasting or complementary colors are the colors that sit directly across from each other on the color wheel. So orange and blue, red and green, yellow and purple. Mixed together, they create brown. So if you have one color bleeding into the next, if you mix it too much, you could turn brown. Because if it's right color bleed, you can get that really nice red bleeding into green without it turning brown. And that's something to practice. So here we have green. Let's see if we can do this. Okay, so I'm going to grab some red. And I'm going to try and do a color bleed. I don't know if that green was wet enough. We'll try again. And this is something I do with my floral. So if I'm doing like a red flower or a pink flower, and I do a green leaf right beside it, you're gonna get that contrast color leaf, which if it mixes too much, if you touch it too much, it's gonna turn brown. So you just kind of have to let it touch once and kind of let it bleed into each other. And that just takes practice doing over and over again. So something like this, an exercise like this is really good to do. Let's grab some green and do another color bleed right beside this red so you can get that proper color bleed that I want. Okay, you want to see the difference between that red and green. You don't want a muddy brown in between. Okay, so you're just tapping it like that. Okay, so you're going to see that green seeping into the red, hopefully not turning brown. Definitely something to practice. Usually when I do color bleeds, besides flowers, I will try and keep the colors that are next to each other on the color wheel so you don't get that brown. But sometimes it works. So see that green just seeping into the red, but you don't really see a brown. You see green, then red. And that's kind of the ideal of what you want. Okay, another way to do that, to put contrasting and complementary colors in the same area, maybe doing wet on wet without getting that muddy brown. Let's try yellow and purple. So I'm gonna do like yellow. Yellow circle here. And I'm not gonna make it too saturated with color because I don't want it to be too much. And we're gonna try and do a wet on wet with purple. Now the trick with that is, again, don't move the brush around too much. Let it drop in that color and let it do its thing. Don't mix. Okay, so I'm gonna make it more saturated on this side. I'm gonna leave it a little bit lighter in the center. So I'm washing out my brush. I'm gonna grab a bit of purple. I'm gonna tap it once. Okay? Or maybe twice. The key is tapping it, not moving your brush around. Okay, so you get that specific yellow color and purple color without mixing it and creating a brown. So I'm going to show you what's going to happen. If you tap it too many times, see how that part coming out is coming out more brown. Here it's more purple. Okay, I also did it on a very saturated yellow part. Okay, so you're going to have more of a chance for it to create purple. An example of this is if you're doing like a pansy. So a lot of them are yellow and purple. So I'll do like the purple petals and then the center I'll put yellow. Just tap it once to get that yellow bleed into the purple. But if you mix, you're going to get a very muddy purple, and that's not what you want. You just want to tap it that one time. Let's see if I can tap it for the yellow right on top of the purple here. Let's see. Let's get more purple. Now wet. Okay. And it also kind of looks like a tie-dye pattern, which is super good. You grab some yellow and you're going to do it right on top. Just tap it once. See how bright that yellow is? Okay, you don't want to mix it around. You have to start spreading around. And you're having purple and yellow wet colors right on top of each other without it mixing. Okay, a lot of people like to overdo it, and it's just too much. Okay, that's when it turns brown. You got to just kind of hold yourself back and let the colors do its thing. So here, see that color bleed from green to red? You get that distinct green into red without the muddy brown mixing. Okay, so try and do this with some contrasting or complementary colors. That's a great practice of how to kind of contain yourself from, going overworking a painting essentially. Okay, so just fill up a whole page with different colors. You can do squares, lines, stripes. So let's. Okay, so here we're going to do color bleed. Doing a stripe. Let's get blue. I'm just going to touch it gently. See that color bleed? Blue to pink. Beautiful. You could just do a whole page of color bleeds, just gently touching. I like when you have like just water on your brush. let that color bleed. Okay, move on, go over to paper. And again, our wet on wet work just like water. Again, try to make sure it's not pooling. Tip it to the side. If it all rushes to one area, it's not ideal. Mop it up with your dry brush or with your towel. Try and get that nice light sheen. Okay, not pooling anywhere. And pigment. And practice dropping in that color. Okay. You can create a lot of fun patterns. Yes. Polka dots, whatever you want. Okay. And then in our next video, I'll show you how to incorporate everything over here into actual and where it comes in. For now, practices, different shapes, different colors. Just have a lot of fun on some really relaxing music, grab yourself a tea, grab yourself a glass of wine, whatever you like, and enjoy the process. And now I'm going to leave you with a relaxing video of me practicing this drill myself. Hope you guys enjoy it.